The mining station on Kepler 442b had been silent for 3 days. Commander Sarah Chun pressed her face against the transport shuttle's viewport, watching the red dwarf sun cast eerie shadows across the abandoned facility below. The emergency beacon had stopped transmitting 12 hours ago, and now only static filled the communication channels. "Looks like a ghost town down there," muttered Corporal Martinez from the pilot's seat. His hands moved nervously over the controls as he brought the shuttle down through the thin atmosphere. Sarah nodded grimly. Kepler 442b wasn't supposed to have any dangerous wildlife. The initial surveys had shown nothing larger than rabbit-sized creatures scurrying through the crystalline forests. That's why the mining operation had been approved with minimal security protocols. Now she was leading a rescue team into what could be a disaster zone. The shuttle touched down in the station's landing bay with a soft thud. Through the transparent steel windows, Sarah could see overturned cargo containers and scorch marks on the walls. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been peaceful. "All right, people," she said, turning to address her 5-person team. "We go in quiet, we find survivors, and we get out. Sensors show atmosphere is breathable, but keep your helmets ready. Martinez and Wong, you're with me on primary sweep. Jackson, Torres, and Novak, secure the perimeter and watch our backs." The airlock cycled open with a hiss, and immediately Sarah could smell something wrong. The air carried a musky, animal scent mixed with the metallic tang of blood. She raised her pulse rifle and activated her suit's tactical display. The mining station's main corridor stretched ahead of them, emergency lighting casting red pools across the floor. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere: tablets, clothing, a child's stuffed animal. Sarah's heart clenched as she realized families had been stationed here, not just miners. "Movement, 2 o'clock, whispered Wong, his rifle swinging toward a darkened doorway. Sarah held up a fist, stopping the team. She enhanced her helmet's audio pickups and listened carefully. There it was, a soft whimpering sound, almost like crying. But it had an odd quality to it, not quite human. They advanced cautiously toward the sound. The corridor opened into the station's main living area, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Furniture was overturned, and walls were gouged with deep claw marks. But what made her blood run cold were the massive paw prints in the dried blood on the floor. Whatever had been here was big, powerful, and clearly predatory. The whimpering grew louder as they approached a damaged residential unit. Sarah signaled for her team to take positions, then slowly pushed open the bent door. Inside, the scene was both heartbreaking and bizarre. 3 creatures that looked like a cross between wolves and lions lay curled up together near an overturned couch. They were clearly young, possibly cubs, with oversized paws and fluffy fur that hadn't yet grown into their adult coats. Their eyes were closed, and they made soft mewling sounds as they slept. But what stopped Sarah's breath entirely was what the cubs were sleeping on. A human man, probably in his 30s, lay beneath the pile of alien cubs. His mining uniform was torn and bloody, but his chest rose and fell steadily. One of the cubs had its head resting on his shoulder, another was curled against his side, and the third had somehow managed to drape itself across his legs. The man's arms were wrapped protectively around the nearest cub, even in sleep. "What the hell?" Martinez breathed over the comms. Sarah held up her hand for silence, studying the impossible scene. The man didn't appear to be injured beyond some superficial cuts and bruises. The cubs looked healthy and well-fed. But how had a human ended up as a living pillow for what were clearly predator offspring? As if sensing their presence, one of the cubs lifted its head and opened eyes that glowed like amber jewels in the dim light. It looked directly at Sarah, tilted its head curiously, then let out a soft chirping sound that was almost friendly. The sound woke its siblings, who also raised their heads to examine the newcomers. Sarah expected them to flee or show aggression, but instead, the cubs seemed merely curious. The largest one, with darker fur around its muzzle, made a rumbling sound that might have been a purr. "They're not afraid of us," Wong observed quietly. The human beneath them stirred, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw Sarah and her team, his expression went from confusion to alarm. "Don't hurt them," he said quickly, his voice hoarse. "Please, they're just babies." They don't understand what happened. Sarah kept her rifle lowered, but ready. Sir, I'm Commander Chun with the Colonial Rescue Service. What's your name, and what's your status? Dr. James Harrison, xenobiologist attached to the mining survey team. He tried to sit up, but the cubs immediately protested with loud mewing sounds and pressed closer to him. I'm fine, just tired. These little ones haven't let me move much for the past day. Dr. Harrison, where is everyone else? What happened to the mining station? James's expression darkened. The pack came 3 days ago. We never saw them coming. They're unlike anything in our databases. Apex predators, highly intelligent, working as a coordinated unit. They struck fast and took everyone they could capture. Sarah felt ice in her veins. Took them where? Their territory, about 15 kilometers north of here, in the Crystal Caves. But they left these 3 behind. James gently stroked the nearest cub's fur. I think they're too young to travel, so the pack was planning to come back for them. Why didn't they take you too? Martinez asked. James smiled sadly. Because when the attack started, these cubs got separated from their parents in the chaos. I found them hiding in the storage bay, terrified and crying. I couldn't just leave them, even knowing what their parents had done. I stayed with them, kept them calm, made sure they felt safe. The largest cub stretched and nuzzled against James's neck, making soft, contented sounds. You stayed to protect the offspring of the creatures that killed your colleagues. Sarah asked, incredulous. Look at them, James said simply. They're babies. None of this is their fault. When their parents come back and find me caring for their young. He shrugged. Maybe they'll see that humans aren't just prey. Wong shook his head. Doc, that's either the bravest thing I've ever heard or the craziest. Before James could respond, Sarah's tactical display lit up with proximity alerts. Her helmet's external microphones picked up a sound that made every human in the room freeze, a deep, resonating howl that seemed to come from multiple throats at once. They're back, James whispered. The cubs immediately perked up, their ears standing straight, and their tails beginning to wag. They recognized that sound. It was their family calling. Sarah's mind raced through their options. They could try to fight their way out. But if these predators had overwhelmed an entire mining station, her small team wouldn't stand much chance. They could try to bargain, but she had no idea how to communicate with alien predators. Or they could trust James's theory that showing care for the cubs might earn them safe passage. The howls were getting closer. Everyone lower your weapons, Sarah ordered. But keep them ready. Dr. Harrison, I hope you're right about this. James nodded and gently shifted the cubs so he could sit up properly. The young predators remained close to him, clearly reluctant to leave their adopted protector. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor outside, accompanied by the clicking of claws on metal flooring. Sarah's heart hammered as she counted at least 6 distinct sets of footfalls approaching. Through the damaged walls, she could see massive shadows moving past the windows. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. For a long moment, nothing happened. Sarah could hear her own breathing loud in her helmet, the soft whimpers of the cubs, and James murmuring reassuring words to them in a low voice. Then, a sound like nothing she'd ever heard before filled the air, a low, intelligent rumble that carried notes of both menace and something that might have been confusion. It was followed by answering calls from other voices, creating a complex harmony that spoke of a sophisticated communication system. They're talking about us, James said quietly, trying to decide what we are. The cubs suddenly became very excited, chirping and mewing loudly toward the doorway. The largest one struggled to its feet and took a few unsteady steps toward the entrance, clearly wanting to go to its parents but unwilling to leave James's side. A massive head appeared around the doorframe. Sarah had to fight every instinct to raise her weapon. The creature was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Its head was easily the size of her torso, with intelligent amber eyes that glowed in the dim light. Its fur was a deep bronze color marked with darker stripes, and when it opened its mouth slightly, she could see fangs longer than her fingers. The predator's gaze swept over the human rescue team, lingered on their weapons, then focused intently on James and the cubs. Its expression was unreadable, but Sarah got the distinct impression she was being evaluated by an intelligence far more complex than she'd expected. The cubs began calling frantically to the adult, their voices high and excited. The big predator made a soft, rumbling response that seemed to calm them. Then, something extraordinary happened. The adult predator stepped fully into the room, and Sarah could see its complete massive form. It stood nearly as tall as she did, with powerful shoulders and legs built for both speed and strength. But instead of attacking or showing aggression, it approached James slowly and deliberately. James remained perfectly still as the creature lowered its great head toward him. Sarah watched in amazement as the predator gently sniffed James's hair and face, its nostrils flaring as it took in his scent. The cubs were practically vibrating with excitement now, climbing over James to reach their parent. The adult